Okay, so we're going to walk through how to do cross-object reporting in HubSpot. If you have any questions along the way, obviously stop me. But we'll go through some general examples. We'll start with some really common ones that you'll end up building in the future, or have probably already been asked to build in general. So when we go to build these reports, for the most part, when we're doing cross-object reporting, a lot of them will be custom report builder types of reports. So that'll be what you select there. For some of these other ones, there are cross-object reporting capabilities in a way, but when you're asking for specific things like contacts with deals that meet a certain criteria, a lot of it will be built through the custom report builder. So we'll go in there. And the interface has changed a little bit recently, but what we're going to do is choose my own data sources for this one. And then when we're choosing our data sources, this primary data source is pretty important to consider just because it's going to be the main data source that we're using for the analysis. So if we're reporting on deals specifically, even if we have other data sources selected as well, we'll want to choose deals as the primary data source. And then we can choose the secondary data sources that relate back to it as well. So I'm going to, let's see. I'm going to do contacts. And for this example, we'll report on deals that fit into certain buckets that are associated with the contacts. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select deals here as my secondary data source. There's a lot of options down here. These are the main objects in the CRM. Marketing has a bunch of different types of objects depending on like what your plan is and stuff. For this account, we have enterprise, so we have access to all of them. You'll see sometimes HubSpot, depending on what data sources you choose, they'll gray out some of the selections just because it's not possible to add it as a secondary data source. So you might have to play around with that a little bit. See, this data source cannot be joined to your selected primary data source. So ad performance can't be tied back to contacts. Let me see if like deal. You can see the options are being grayed out there. This might be more like campaigns. Yeah, I'm not sure in terms of what some of these are. Cookie banner. We'll just ignore that. There's so many options in HubSpot when it comes to custom reporting that I'm honestly not familiar with every single one. It's usually better to start with like a question and then try to build the report from there. But I'll go back here, select deals. Let's say we also want to tie back certain sales activities, so calls. I don't know if we have that in our sample data set. Choose tasks as well. And then we hit the reporting limit here. So we won't be able to select anymore, but you can also choose like service things if there's conversations, feedback, submissions. When you do that, you'll see some information in the data join info panel here. So you can see the data set that we're working with. There aren't any calls that are in our example data set. So I'm actually going to go uncheck that. You can see we have 5 tasks, 170 deals, 531 contacts, and then the rows specifically down here. And we're just going to click on next. And so now that we set up our data model here, let's say we're configuring stuff and we realize we got some of the data sources wrong. Maybe it's some of the marketing objects or something. You can always go back and edit the data sources by just clicking that button. So it's not like once you choose it, you're gonna have to go start at the beginning again. So that's just an interesting note. It's also useful if, like, let's say you have a report that you already built, you want to clone it and then change one data source in it. You can still do that. So you'll be able to start from like a template rather than starting from scratch again and reconfiguring everything. So depending on how complex the report is, that can be pretty useful as well. The other thing to note is you have various ways to look at the properties that are available. HubSpot breaks them up into the objects, the data sources that you selected, and you can also just search. So like, let's say we do stage. This is kind of confusing in my opinion, but when you search, it goes across all the data sources again. Otherwise, if you're browsing, it's only in one. So something to keep in mind as well. If you're browsing, you'll have to toggle this to see what's available. All right. So let's see. We'll report on something like this. First name. Actually, let's do email. So we're just going to make a simple table here. And then we're going to add on filter, where we're filtering by any contact that has more than one associated deal. And then when we go back here, let's pull in an amount column here. So now what we're going to see is HubSpot its primary data source is the contact, which is driven by the email here. And then it's pulling in the amount from each associated deal. And so if we wanted to verify that, then what we could do is we could drop on something like a record ID from the deal specifically. And you'll see that HubSpot also, if there's a property that has the same name across different objects, it'll append the actual object here to the property name. And so you can see here that contacts have multiple deals. So bh@hubspot.com. These are the amounts of each of the deals. And then the record ID here is different for each of these. And so we're confirming here that we're pulling in all of the deals. There's no duplicates. And these are the amounts of each of the deals. And so that's an example of one really simple cross object report. You can get really fancy with these. And so it becomes useful when you're trying to report on marketing activities, for example, just because there's so many different types of marketing activities, whether it's like ad interactions, emails, stuff like that. You can bring in all that data associated with the contact, where if you were just reporting on the contact, you wouldn't be able to get granular by, let's say, for example, a specific email that you sent. So instead, if you do cross-object reporting, you'll be able to add in the emails and filter by specific emails that they've interacted with. So you're only seeing the contacts associated with that. The last note that I'll say is utilizing cross-object reporting helps you avoid duplicating data across objects. So you technically shouldn't, in most cases, be copying data from one object to another, unless there's like a specific reason. So you shouldn't just copy every single contact property over to the deals. Like that's just duplicative and it's a waste. And so if you understand and can use cross-object reporting, then you realize that that's not necessary in any way. And so going back to like other tools like Tableau, it's a similar situation when you're dealing with your data models that have multiple tables, and you can filter the fields by multiple tables, and you just have to understand how each table relates to each other when you're building everything. So HubSpot's no different. The benefit is you're only using HubSpot's data model, which is consistent. And so once you build these cross-object reports, you'll understand the data model and you'll be able to be really efficient with it. So I'll take a pause there. Any questions you all have or any other examples that you would want to see?